If I was to describe the Frontier Justice to someone in very simple terms, they might consider it to be one of the most overpowered weapons in the game. I mean, think about it, it gives you 1 crit for every assist you get from the sentry gun and 2 crits for every sentry kill. And considering how effortless it is to get a kill with the sentry, any player who is unfamiliar with the engineer can still get a few kills with it. However, despite this huge benefit that it has, it's hard for me to describe it as an overpowered weapon, because getting kills to get the crits is one thing, but also staying alive to use them is another. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I use the Frontier Justice, as well as give some tips on how to maximize your kills. But first things first, let's talk about the stats. So the Frontier Justice gains 2 revenge crits for each sentry kill and 1 for each sentry assist when your sentry is destroyed. It has a 50% clip size reduction, it does no random critical hits, and its revenge crits are lost upon death. Now taking a look at the damage, it's the same as the stock shotgun. It does a total of 90 damage at point blank range, 60 at medium, and 32 at long. If you get a crit with this, you do 18 damage per pellet, so 18 times 10 equals 180 damage in total. That's enough to kill more than half of the classes in one shot, so needless to say, you'll always want to go for a point blank shot when possible. There really wasn't much to talk about when it comes to the Frontier Justice. The only 2 things that you have to keep in mind is of course the crits, and that you only have 3 shots until you have to reload entirely. But I'll get to that soon. First I want to talk about how I usually play engineer. So in this gameplay you can see that our team has a total of 5 engineers including myself, which may sound a bit strange, but believe me, it can work really well. Usually on defense you won't see more than 2 engineers at a time, but if you do, they usually stick around in the same location. And although it's generally a bad idea to have your sentries close by together, it could sometimes work out in your favor. I mean, just look at this, we managed to pin an Ubered soldier at the corner and he had no chance of escape. Of course our sentries weren't at the same spot, but this proves that having more than 1 or 2 engineers is important to deal with stuff like that. And even when you have to retreat, you can always rely on at least 1 engineer to have their sentry up. Needless to say, it's a good idea to have more engineers on defense rather than offense. And speaking of offense, usually whenever I play this route, it's for 2 reasons. One is if my team doesn't already have an engineer, and 2 is mostly for fun. But in any case, only 2 things don't change about this loadout. 1 is using the gunslinger, and 2 the short circuit. If I'm not using the Frontier Justice, usually I'll either pick the panic attack or the Black Widow. However, I tend to find the Frontier Justice to be a bit more challenging when using it this way, because your mini sentries do less damage than your normal sentries. Usually you'll want to place your mini sentries in locations where your enemies cannot see them, such as behind them. This can not only guarantee an assist, but maybe even a kill if you're lucky. But unfortunately this wasn't in my case, so I just used the 2 crits that I saved up to kill at least 1 of them. Generally speaking, you'll want to place your mini sentry in a location where the enemy is more focused on your teammates rather than your sentry. So this could be around the corner or inside of a building that has an opening in the front. And of course, once you start building up crits, you might be tempted enough to use them immediately. In my case, that's pretty much what I did, and I think it paid off for the most part. However, sometimes I don't always get this lucky because of the stupid choices that I make, which often result in my death. Going back to the defensive engineer, you can see that I have 6 revenge crits built up, and I wanted to use them against the enemy team in a way that would catch them off guard. Obviously that did not go well at all. I don't know how much damage I did in total, but it was definitely not enough to kill that demo. You see, the problem here wasn't necessarily how many enemies there were, but rather the distance between myself and them. I don't know if this is exactly medium range, but considering that I only did 108 damage to this demo, it was definitely not point blank range. And it only got worse as I started to back out because my damage dropped to 18, or in other words, only 1 pellet connected to the enemy. So this problem isn't just because of distance, but also accuracy. Throughout this video, you may have seen me engage in gunfights where I miss 1 shot, but then I get the enemy in the next one. And believe me, that happens a lot more frequently than I show. And it's only frustrating if you miss all of your 3 shots because now you have to reload entirely. But that's just the Frontier Justice for you. It almost forces you to use crits with it instead of just using it by itself. Now of course, if you have impeccable accuracy, you can use this just fine and kill most classes with ease. However, if you're someone like me who tends to to miss many of their shots, I wouldn't recommend using this, at least if you're trying to go for a serious offense engineer loadout. The Frontier Justice definitely gets a lot more value on defense rather than offense. And although many people tend to pair off the Frontier Justice with the Gunslinger, this is mostly because building a mini sentry is a lot faster than building a regular sentry. You may not be guaranteed a kill, but you'll definitely get an assist if your teammates are helping you out. And if you're by yourself, your chances of surviving are probably a lot higher because the enemy might be focused on the mini sentry rather than you. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if this is your first time playing with the Frontier Justice, try it out as a defensive engineer first. And once you're familiar with how to use it, only then can I recommend using it with an offensive engineer loadout. So that's pretty much all I had to say about the Frontier Justice. I wouldn't say my tips are exactly revolutionary, but there are definitely things that many players tend to ignore, including myself. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it entertaining at the very least. Anyways, have a good day.